as she joins us. Hello.
Hello, hi.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that this got spurred because you gave us a behind the scenes experience of what happens in the lab, and we wanted to come and bring that to the HTFA community so that they too can have that aha and wow moment that we all had. But before we even get to experience a day in the lab with you, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself to the HTFA community?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Vicki. I'm here in LA at Pacific Fertility Center, Los Angeles. I'm the lab supervisor here. I manage our embryology team of really incredible scientists and embryologists and lab technicians. And I'm here to share a little bit about what we do behind the scenes in the IVF lab.
Amazing. So before we even get into the lab, can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to become an embryologist, how you chose that piece of the puzzle of being part of the fertility journey?
Of course. So it's kind of a funny story. It kind of happened naturally. I was on the pre-medical track in college, and I got the opportunity to intern at an IVF clinic one summer.
Mhm.
And at the time, this was several years ago, I think IVF wasn't something that was really spoken about much. It was a very hush-hush topic. It was quite taboo. And so I didn't have a lot of experience with the field. And when I had the opportunity to intern that summer, it really blew my mind and opened up this whole new world of IVF and human reproduction and the incredible technology that exists to help people kind of have their family building dreams come true.
Sure.
And so I kind of naturally fell into that path and found myself a space here in IVF. And it was the best decision that ever happened because it is the dream job for me.
Wow, that's amazing, and just obviously so meant to be. Can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like to enter the lab on a daily basis? What do you encounter? What is your piece in the puzzle of creating this embryo?
Sure, of course. So when it comes to an IVF clinic and an IVF lab, we all have a super important role in the process. There's not one department that I think can function without the other. But when it comes to the IVF lab, we kind of work behind the scenes, as you saw. When we come in, we gear up. So we have our scrubs on, we change our shoes, we cover our faces, our masks, we cover our hair. So we get ready to be in the lab environment all day. We'll wash our hands. And then when we start the day, the most important thing of the day is to QC the lab. And every single lab has to do this. So what we do is before we touch anything, open anything, start working hands-on with any specimen at the bench, we go around and we check the gas levels, oxygen, carbon dioxide levels, temperatures of every single station, incubator, fridge, freezer. We make sure all of our sensors are on, that everything is working optimal and within range. And it's super important to know that at the start of each day, because if anything is off, we have an opportunity to fix it right then and there. We handle some of the most important specimen in the world, in my opinion. And so it's really critical for us to make sure that the lab is operating at, the most optimal levels and everything's functioning properly. And then once we know that all of that is set, we start our day. So depending on the schedule for that day, our team splits up and we kind of tackle the workload, whether it's processing semen samples, freezing eggs, doing the egg retrievals. We check all of our embryos in culture. Anything that's a beautiful blastocyst and ready to be biopsied or frozen, we have a team that tackles that. And then there's other tasks throughout the day, like patient messaging, data reporting, keeping track of our statistics. It's really important for us to make sure that month to month we're operating at our benchmarks or above those. So we have a lot of tasks throughout the day, hands-on and kind of a little bit more administrative as well.
Wow. So if we kind of back up into kind of the imagery I remember, like when you showed us that special window that goes from the operating room into the lab and then back to the lab to that operating room. So a patient is coming through the fertility clinic. They've gone through their injections, stimulated, they're ready for a retrieval. Where does your piece of that process begin in their journey?
So the patient has quite a process before the IVF lab steps in. So they have consultations, appointments, ultrasounds, diagnostic tests, blood labs. And then once they're ready to start a cycle, they have, depending on their treatment, 2 weeks or so of, again, appointments, ultrasounds, medications, injections. And then once their physician deems that they're ready for a retrieval, that's when we step in. So on the day of their egg retrieval, they'll come in and we have a beautiful lab that's set up adjacent to our operating room. Everything happens on site here. And the OR team and the lab team will work side by side. And as the physician aspirates all of the follicles and gets the eggs out of the ovaries, one of our lab team members is sitting on the other side of that wall, ready to grab those tubes and search for those eggs. So it's a very collaborative environment, but it's a process for the patient to get there. So as soon as they're ready, we're there to catch those eggs.
And so then once you have the eggs, can you walk us through the steps before they make it into the incubator?
Yeah. So we get these little tubes of follicular fluid, and we very quickly have to kind of search for those microscopic eggs within that fluid. So we'll collect all of the eggs that the physician has aspirated. We clean them off and we kind of put them aside for an hour. And that's kind of the rest period. We let those eggs kind of chill in the incubator for an hour, let them kind of acclimate to the new environment. And then once we do that, we're able to clean those eggs even further to determine the maturity of those eggs. So we'll know which eggs are suitable for freezing or injection, whatever the patient's treatment is, or which eggs are kind of immature. And that's something that some people don't realize is not every egg is suitable and not every egg is mature. And we hope that the majority are. And once we know the maturity, those eggs get put into incubation again, and they get to kind of rest for a while. And if they're ready to be frozen, we'll freeze them that same day. And if they're ready to be fertilized, we'll fertilize them a couple of hours after retrieval. And then they get put into the incubator for the night. And about 18 hours or so later, we'll check them for fertilization.
And in this process, what do you think that most people misunderstand about what's happening that you would like to clarify for, based off of questions, conversations you have with patients? I think a lot often, or at least I could speak from my own experience in that had been shared with me, we often don't get this opportunity to connect with the embryologist. We have wonderful doctors, hopefully, who are taking care of us, but the insight of the embryologist is not usually part of a conversation piece for us.
That's right. I guess there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconception when it comes to IVF because it traditionally has been something that was so behind the scenes and kind of locked behind lab doors. One is kind of the natural attrition that happens, kind of like I mentioned. Not every egg is mature, and that's normal. And of the mature eggs, not every egg will fertilize normally. And of the fertilized eggs, not every egg makes it to a blastocyst. And of the ones that do become a blastocyst, you might know this, not every egg is genetic, or not every embryo, is genetically normal. So there's this natural kind of decline throughout the week of development that I think to some people can be quite alarming and shocking if they're not expecting that. But it is normal, and that's kind of the natural development of things. We start with a big pool of eggs, and then as the week progresses, we'll end up with a handful of that maybe. And if it's a handful of great quality ones, then our job is done and that's a success. But I think just understanding that is the natural process of things can help people kind of, be comfortable with the process and know that that's what to expect.
For sure. And it tempers expectations so that when you hear a big number, and then a reduction throughout, that knowing that there's nothing wrong with you. That is very normal. That is what your doctor and your embryologist are expecting will happen. I think does give that reassurance that like this is normal and part of the process.
Yeah,
So yes, thank you for clarifying that.
of course.
So in the few years that you have now been an incredible embryologist, what are the coolest new advances in science that you have had the opportunity to engage with, and that you've seen? I know that this is a field that is continuously growing, and now with AI exploding in the type of technology that is being created and hopefully going to become more accessible over time. What has been for you the most exciting piece of that?
That's a great question. So IVF, as you know, is not a very old field. It's only a couple of decades old. And so the advancements that have been made in the last several decades have been huge. And it's a field that's rapidly evolving, growing with technology and advancements. And one of the biggest advancements to date, I think, is the development of AI. So AI is kind of booming everywhere, you know, in every field, but especially when it comes to reproduction. Um, and with the development of AI, we now have kind of this deeper insight into embryo development and egg quality and kind of these unseen algorithms that have been developed that go beyond the human eye. So even with the most trained physicians and embryologists, there's things that AI is able to pick up on that we would never be able to see. So we're able to help kind of add that into our, you know, expertise and our education and make optimized treatment plans for patients. So I think that's kind of the future of IVF and where that's going. And I'm sure it's going to be a part of the field moving forward. But it's definitely a cool advancement.
That's wonderful. You've shared so much and really given us an eye into your day to day and the experience of what used to be more behind the scenes that's now coming out, so that it is part of our understanding of our journey as we grow our families using reproductive technologies. Is there anything, any piece of advice or any last thing you'd like to leave the HTICVA community with?
Um, the one piece of advice I would say, just be kind to yourself. I know this is really by no means an easy process for most people. Most people come in not wanting to be here. And I think we don't hold that lightly. You know, we really do understand that for the majority of people, being here is kind of against their will. So I know it's stressful. It can be physically quite taxing. It can be emotionally quite challenging. There's so many kind of hurdles and burdens that maybe come along with this. And so give us that stress. I tell all patients, while you're going through this, be kind to yourself. I know stress is normal and having the anxiety is normal. So don't feel bad to feel it. But if you can go outside, get an ice cream cone, whatever it is that you need to do to get through that kind of challenging period, treat yourself with kindness and give us the stress. We're trained in handling this.
Right.
Give us as much of your stress and we'll do our best to make this process easy. And you'll get through it. We have, you know, a great team of support, physicians, technicians, an amazing team of people here to support our patients. So it's our goal to make it as easy as possible for a process that really isn't easy at all.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, such an important piece, and even something as small as taking a deep breath to help ground yourself. So important throughout this journey. So thank you. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for taking the time to give us this eye behind what is that little door into the lab or window. Thank you so much, Vicki. Have a wonderful day.
You're welcome. You too.
Thanks.